Hi, my name is Simmons Buntin. I'm coming to you from the land before time, as you can tell from my bedrock background. It's just so you don't have to see my closet of an office that I'm in. Um, I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, where I respectfully acknowledge my presence on the traditional and ancestral lands of the O'odham and Pascua Yaqui, as well as the beautiful saguaro and creosote populated valleys and hills and arroyos nestled between the Santa Catalina, Rincon, Santa Rita, Tortolita, and Tucson Mountains. We are a valley surrounded by 5 mountain ranges here in Tucson. So welcome. Thanks for joining us this evening for what I know is going to be a really amazing reading this evening. I want to thank our readers, Suzanne Roberts and Sholeh Wolpé and Christina Rivera Cogswell for joining us this evening. Big thanks especially, I must say, to Sholeh, who is joining us from Barcelona this evening, where you may see her chasing around a mosquito with an electronic racket, and that's okay because that's what they do in Barcelona at 2 a.m. That, and I think eat dinner sometimes that late there, yes? Um, okay, so anyway, thanks wherever you're from. Thank you for joining us. If your connection becomes slow, you may want to turn off your video. In all cases, please remain muted at least until the end when we'll open it up for Q&A. And until then, post your questions and other positive feedback in chat, and we'll go from there. So we're recording this and all readings, and we'll make those available from terrain.org and our YouTube channel soon-ish. And we'd love it if you would officially follow our YouTube channel as well. We promise not to spam you from there. Not too much anyway. This is our last spring reading. We hope to host a conversation between Sandra Steingraber and Taylor Brorby, however, author of the new acclaimed book Boys and Oil, Growing Up Gay in a Fractured Land, in June. And Taylor is on here with us, so thanks, Taylor, for joining us, and we can chat later about making sure we get Sandra signed up for that. So keep an eye out for an announcement on that, and then we'll start up again in September, which will include an autumn reading with the Institute for American Indian Arts. Links to register for this reading and these other readings will be found on terrain.org as soon as they are officially scheduled. For additional information, or if you'd like to sponsor an event, please contact me. You can drop me a private message if you want, or just shoot me an email at info@terrain.org. We would love to have your sponsorship. We're always looking for sponsors for these readings because we do pay our contributors. I'll be posting terrain.org contribution and book links in the chat in support of our readers this evening. But if you missed those or want to find other books by tonight's readers and other terrain.org contributors, hop on over to our bookshop page at bookshop.org/shop/terrain.org, or easier still, find the link under the About menu item on the terrain.org website. So now, a word about terrain.org. Oh, let me let somebody in here real quickly. I'm running the full ship tonight, so if we run aground, I am the captain you can blame. Okay, now a word about terrain.org, the world's first online journal of place, publishing since 1998 and celebrating our 25th anniversary next year. We're just coming off our third AWP Small Press Publisher Award finalist selection in a row, and we'll have 2 very exciting announcements coming up. One this week about a new book series, but I can't say more just yet. And then in June, the announcement of our editors' prizes in fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. So keep an eye out for those soon. If you're not aware, terrain.org is an all-volunteer organization that doesn't charge to access our content, nor charge to submit, contests notwithstanding, nor contain advertising. Indeed, we are run by the power of goodwill and dedicated weekends and evenings, including 2 a.m. in Barcelona, and I like to think love. And we are run by donations from good folks like you. We are, through our parent organization, Terrain Publishing, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and donations to support our contributors and readers, such as Suzanne and Sholeh and Christina this evening, are tax deductible. Please consider donating at terrain.org/donate. Thank you, and okay. So now let's turn to the reading, followed by our Q&A. Please post your questions in the chat area, and thanks again for joining us this evening. Oh, let me let Susan in. Okay, one more person joining us. All right. So now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's first reader, Christina Rivera Cogswell, who, by the way, is the author of the highly acclaimed essay that appeared in Terrain.org called The 17th Day. And I'll post a link over to that here in just a moment. Christina Rivera Cogswell's essays are published or forthcoming in the Kenyon Review, Orion, Catapult, Bat City Review, River Teeth, and elsewhere. She won Pacifica Literary Review's 2019 Creative Nonfiction Contest, judged by Melissa Febos, and her essay, The 17th Day, which I just mentioned, was nominated for the John Burroughs 2022 Nature Essay Award. Christina's Work in Progress book of essays, titled My Oceans, a collection of eco-feminist reflections on motherhood in the face of the climate crisis, was recently selected as a finalist for the Siskiyou Prize for New Environmental Literature and is represented by MMQ LIT or MMQ Lit. Christina, take it away.
Thank you, Simmons. So good to be here. It's an honor to be here sharing this panel, and thanks for everyone tuning in. So I'm going to be reading from the essay that Simmons mentioned, The 17th Day. It's one of 19 essays in a collection of essays that I'm working on right now. So The 17th Day, two mammals swimming in a toxic world. Stars blink back at me through the top of my bedroom window, but I feel dawn coming. I pat my night table just as my phone's alarm vibrates. I've been waiting all night, my sleep fragmented and knowing I was not allowed to use the bathroom. My mouth, too, tacky with thirst. There was no water on the nightstand because the test instructions had forbidden it. So as not to disturb my sleeping husband, I tiptoe to the bathroom and flip the switch, which reveals the awaiting blue box from the Great Plains Laboratory, labeled GPL Tox Profile. In parentheses, next to the acronym, 173 toxic non-metal chemicals. I am not new to this test. We have a history, a story I shelved but picked up again because I was reminded by the most unlikely of reminders. Another female mammalian body swimming through the waters of the 21st century. Her name, Tahlequah. Global millions watched with me back in 2018 as Tahlequah, the orca also known as J35, swam for 17 days, pushing the decomposing body of her dead baby through 1,000 miles of Salish Sea. Tahlequah is now back in the news. The cytologists who spot her through heavy binoculars celebrate because the male calf that Tahlequah gave birth to last fall is still alive. His official pod identification is J57, and his birth offers a spark of hope for the southern resident killer whale population listed as endangered in 2005. In drone photos, the new babe frolics beside his mother. The celebrations, though, belie the weight of Tahlequah's story and some in my own, unfinished. The same summer of Tahlequah's tour of grief, I booked my first appointment with a locally renowned osteopath. I was done with my pregnancies and my children had stopped nursing and toddled away, but my body no longer felt mine. I had symptoms swirling out of control: brain fog, hand rashes, weight gain, recurring climate disaster nightmares that woke me regularly in cold sweats. I saved for over a year for the appointments my health insurance wouldn't cover. The first test yielded no conclusions, no abnormal hormones or alarming blood numbers or parasites or excessive exposure to mold. Then there was the heavy metals test. I swallowed gray pills the doctors called chelating agents before that urine sample. 2 hours later, I staggered to my living room and, steadying my head with one hand, reached for the phone to call my doctor. What's happening to me? My body feels heavy and slow, like I'm swimming or sinking in a black cloud. I remember the pause on the other side of the line. Then I was reassured the reaction wasn't dangerous, although maybe telling. That's when my osteopath added the test for 217 chemicals to my checklist. A month later, I called. Shouldn't those results be in? Oh, you're home. Just arrived. I thought you said you upload those test results to my patient portal. The doctor knew I was prone to over-investigation of my reports. that it was in my style to arrive with a binder full of color-coded and bullet-pointed questions penned in 0.05 millimeter ballpoint. "We do have your test results back," she said, "but we knew you were out of town and we thought it better if you came into the office to discuss them. Can you come in today?" Tahlequah is one of the 73 resident orcas whose ancestors have known the Salish Sea of Washington and British Columbia as home for over 700,000 years. She is identified by the unique swirl and color tones of a patch on her back right behind her dorsal fin, which functions like a fingerprint for the cytologists who take notes. It was the saddle patch that identified Tahlequah when she gave birth to the female calf in 2018. She had carried the baby for roughly 18 months. It was the first birth in the J-pod family in 3 years. I imagined the calf before she died, her unblemished ink black skin and white patches on her belly and chin, mirroring those of her mother, her tiny two-lobed whale's tail, a perfect replica of Tahlequah's flukes, propelling her small body to her mother's side for the half hour she lived. If we, those obsessed with her death, had accepted the reality of the statistics, we might have been prepared. In 2018, 75% of southern resident killer whale calves were dying. They called it the SRKW dead baby boom. I pee in the cup for the follow-up chemicals test. It's a task I've mastered from the 28 months comprising the 4 pregnancies, 2 successful, 2 not, in which each trip to the obstetrician began with a plastic cup and Sharpie pen. But this time I'm not pregnant, and the instructions for the chemicals test are concise. The sample must be yellow in color, because this test is looking for mycotoxins, which congregate in the urine of a dehydrated body. I was supposed to get the follow-up test 2 years ago, but didn't, because after 8 months of detoxing, I gave up on the prescribed regimen. I was sick of the rotten egg smell of detoxifying glutathione slipping down my throat, out of funds to fill the pill box with supplements separated by morning, noon, and night, and scared of the nicin that flushed my face red and made me feel faint. I was over the drippy cod liver oil packs wrapped with plastic around my belly, done boiling coffee for enemas and locking myself behind the bathroom door, and over the paleo diet clashing with my vegetarian palate. The replacement of all my mercury dental fillings had put me into debt. I suspect I also quit because I didn't want to know the results, afraid my money and time and efforts would amount to nothing or everything, afraid of more evidence shaking in my hands. What most people don't know about Tahlequah is that she miscarried another baby in 2010. She might have lost more. A 2017 study of killer whale fecal samples revealed that 69% of pregnant southern resident whales lose their babies before or soon after birth. But just as human miscarriages and birth defects and incomplete pregnancies are reserved for whispers, orcas' perinatal losses go mostly unobserved. Many obsessed with Tahlequah also don't know that her sister likely died from birthing complications. Tahlequah assumed care for her sister's infant, J54. The young calf starved to death soon after. One could assume Tahlequah was new to death given her 17-day demonstration of grief, but she was already too familiar. Though they tried, researchers could not find the body of Tahlequah's babe for the investigation they hoped would provide more answers. But I keep thinking of what we do know, that Tahlequah would not let the calf's body sink. She put her head under her infant's limp body and pushed it to the surface. I think of what it required to carry the sinking near 400 pounds of her dead baby for 17 days. Unlike humans, breathing for orcas is not a reflex, but a conscious act. Tahlequah had to ascend at least once every 12 minutes. She didn't just ascend, she made the decision to go up for air. She went up. She took her baby's body with her. She took a breath, and this gets me. She decided each time again, I'm not done. At the osteopath's office, in our appointment in which they preferred to review the results in person, the toxology report shook in my hands. The tests conclude my flesh was steeped in heavy metals and industrial chemicals. Mercury, lead, and uranium, I could at least pronounce. I scanned only the acronyms next to the chemicals presenting dangerous levels in my body, MTBE, a gasoline additive, PGO, a styrene used in plastic manufacturing, PERC, a chemical used in explosives and fertilizers, DDP, a flame retardant, NAPR, a solvent used for metal and foam gluing, 2,4-D, an herbicide that was part of Agent Orange used by the US in the Vietnam War. Together, the small acronyms were assaulting my body as neurotoxins, endocrine disruptors, human carcinogens, and central nervous system and reproductive toxins. It was, the doctor concluded, the likely terrain of brain fog, rashes, and anxiety disorders. It was also the territory of miscarriages and fetal birth defects, both of which were checked on my chart. The doctor explained that I couldn't take more chelating agents or just burn fat, because if the toxins and heavy metals didn't have a clear path out of my body, they would recycle through my bloodstream and lodge in more dangerous places, like my brain. The other way fat is released from the female body is through breast milk. The biological transfer of contaminants, it is called, this breastfeeding of toxins from mammal to infant. I couldn't look up from the reports in my hands when I asked. I nursed my children each for a year. Were these metals and toxins in my body then? Despite the lack of eye contact, the doctor's answers still found me. Probably. When I recounted the abandoned metal mines I lived near in Colorado, the well in Oregon I drank water from as a child, the smog in India I breathed for 2 years, the polluted waters I've swum in, my doctor just shook her head. I know this is hard, but I recommend you focus on getting the toxins out. The investigations rarely yield answers. The fact is, modern humans are swimming in environmental toxins. I looked at my hands. The rash had started underneath my wedding ring as small blisters, rising, burning, itching, drying, flaking, moving down the inside of my finger, then up to a patch under my cuticle. Then the subterranean blisters popped up on the other hand, same finger, different migration. This time it traveled south to the outside of my palm, where it was kept in check only by a steroid cream prescribed by a dermatologist who offered nothing else but a shrug. Orcas, no toxins, or maybe they don't. But the pathologists who do necropsy on the bodies of killer whales have discovered that orcas often carry as many as 25 times the number of PCBs statistically known to affect health, mortality, and fertility. PCB is short for polychlorinated biphenyls. PCBs are usually clear or yellow, can exist in liquid forms, and have no taste or smell. They were manufactured by Monsanto in the US until about 1977, the year I was born. But PCBs don't go away. They accumulate in the bodies of what or whoever consumes them, like plankton and Chinook salmon and seals. PCBs accumulate most in the bodies of apex predators. This is something Tahlequah and I have in common. We are both apex predators. It's no secret where the SRKW orca gets her toxins. She gets them from the Chinook salmon that run the rivers to the Salish Sea. And it's not a secret where the Chinook get their PCBs, from exposure to PCB-contaminated sediments and PCB-contaminated foods in waters polluted by upstream shipyards, slaughterhouses, and manufacturing plants. PCB exposure is linked to birth defects in both female orcas and humans. The most observed symptom in humans is rashes. Orcas share original resident status with the indigenous peoples who cohabitated with everything living upstream in a 5,000-year-old heritage. That equitable balance ended with the arrival of white settlers. Though under-researched, Native communities are today more at risk for toxic exposure than any other ethnic group in the US. One Canadian study in 1997 revealed that some Inuit women have levels of PCBs 5 times more than the safety threshold. I feel it in my breast when I find these words from an Inuit mother. The idea scares me. The more I think about it, the more scared I get, she said as milk slid down her grinning babe's cheek. I know there's a possibility of passing on contaminants to him. I can't imagine not breastfeeding my baby. And I'll stop there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Christina. That is such a powerful, powerful essay. And I put the link in the chat for those of you who didn't get a chance to read it before this. I definitely recommend you spend the time with it. There are also some wonderful photographs from that orca pod by Elizabeth Sawyer. So be sure to check that out. Again, thank you, Christina. Okay, it is my pleasure now to introduce Sholeh Wolpé, coming to us from Barcelona. Sholeh is an Iranian-American poet and playwright. She is the author or editor of more than a dozen books, several plays, and an oratorio. Her most recent book, Abacus of Loss, a memoir in verse, was picked by the Mary Sue magazine as one of the 8 beautiful contemporary novels written in verse that make poetry accessible, and is one of 17 books recommended by Orion magazine. Sholeh's translations of 12th century Sufi mystic poet Attar, The Conference of the Birds, and 20th century Iranian rebel poet Furo Farrokhzad, Sin, Selected Poems, have garnered awards and established Sholeh as a celebrated recreator of Persian poetry into English. Her newest musical project is The Conference of Birds, an oratorio, composed by Fahad Sadat and choreographed by Andrei Megardichian. It will premiere at the Broad Stage in Los Angeles in June. Sholeh is currently a writer in residence at the University of California, Irvine, and lives in Los Angeles, and as we know now, is coming to us from Barcelona. Sholeh, thank you for joining us.
I just had to unmute myself. Hello. Hi, everyone. It is 2:30 a.m. in Barcelona. I've had my cup of coffee, and I'm very pleased to be with you all. And thank you, Simmons, for having me. And it's a pleasure to hear you, Christina. So I was thinking about what I should read from Abacus of Loss. This is Abacus of Loss. It's a memoir in verse, and it's not a regular book of poetry or prose. It is a book that combines art, reportage, prose, and poetry to tell a tale, to tell my story. But the book is divided into sections following the shape of an abacus with its rods, and every rod is a chunk of memory. So I'm gonna read rod 6, and every rod contains beats, just like an abacus. So it's going to be beat 1, beat 2, but I'm just not going to say beat 1, beat 2. I'm just going to read the whole thing. It makes sense. I'm sitting here in Barcelona, and absolutely I'm listening to the news, and I'm horrified by what's going on with abortion rights, with rights of women to their bodies. And so I would like to read Pink, the section of Pink. So it starts with beat 1. She is still bleeding 3 days later, still in pain. We return to the clinic on the other side of town. Her feet are put back into the stirrups, her legs pulled apart. There are pieces still clinging to her womb like strands of red algae. The procedure has to be repeated. No, no, she sobs. I can't do it again. Mama used to call her prime good, the way she blinked her green eyes and deepened her dimples, the way she swayed her hips and unbound her silky brown hair from a tight ponytail triggered desire, even in straight women. Now she lies on a cold, hard bed, legs sprawled, She crunches her face, bites her lower lip, lifts her shoulders and neck, and squeezes my hand so hard I want to scream. I brush away strands of hair from her eyes, this girl who was once the jewel of Tehran. When we met when we were 11 at a summer camp at the base of Alborz Mountain. She came dressed in enviable jeans made in the UK. I came armed with a new skit I had written and copied in lined notebooks. We each wanted what the other had, I, her exquisite beauty, and she, my easy wit. We folded into each other like a two-paper origami. Boys I had a crush on fell for her. It would be a lie to say it didn't hurt. But beauty like that was a gift from God, so I became the chronicler of her tears, the dispenser of advice, the therapist, the silly cheer-up crown. Now, between her thighs, the doctor is playing a war game with her body's desire to hold on to what has been imposed by nature, God, angels, chance. What does it matter? Her Persian lover is doused with Paco Rabanne aftershave. He sits in the clinic's spotless waiting room. They were once in love or lust. He has 2 kids, she has 1. He has a conservative wife, she's divorced. He's ambitious, she's bitter about what life has dealt her. Perspectives make any story Play-Doh. You can shape and tell it 100 ways. Silence. Then plop, the clink of metal against metal. The doctor walks over to the counter, puts the bowl in the sink, then leaves. His leather shoes suction the linoleum floor. I casually wander to the sink. Shouldn't have. What's inside that metal bowl melts my marrow. Not because it's gruesome or violent, but because it's a nothing, just a slimy pink ooze. Is this how we begin? This? She moans, it hurts. I don't know if she means her heart or her womb. I look away from the sink and something catches fire between my eyebrows, a scalding ache like a sting of a scorpion. I pull a blanket over my friend. She closes her eyes. Her face is swollen. Lines around her eyes spread like runaway roads to nowhere. He believed in skin to skin. Pills nauseated her. She imagined she was too old to sprout his seed. Each time he brought her tuberoses wrapped in golden cellophane. I throw up my breakfast in the bathroom, yogurt and peaches that look like a whirling universe of pink starfish. The doctor comes back, asks my friend how she's feeling. She cries. I go to the waiting room and watch her lover pay the bill in cash. His wallet is black. He counts the bills one by one. How is she? He asks. I shrug. He drops his head, shakes his head east to west, west to east. I do love her, he says. His eyes are the color of burnt toast. I rub the pain between my eyebrows, tell him, she doesn't want to see you. He nods, turns to leave, then stops. Tell her I'm sorry for this, for everything. I want to say, tell her yourself, jellyfish, but my tongue is suddenly stone. She's dressed and ready to go. Walking is difficult. Living is difficult, especially today. Shame is indelible. If you let it, it will stain your forehead like a tattoo. The doctor puts his hand on her shoulder, pats it gently. He's like that steel bowl. He holds within himself what he yanks out. This is his sacrifice. He looks at me, straight at me, and I know he's read my thoughts. Or maybe every friend who comes to hold hands has the same thoughts, the same grateful look. Maybe he registers us all in his eyes and stows us away in the vaults of his consciousness for the days when he battles fear, doubt, or fatigue. Her apartment smells of dead tuberoses. I tuck her in, make her chicken soup. She wants a cigarette. I give her 2. She smokes 5, drinks tea, refuses soup. I pick up her daughter from school, buy her a new backpack. The girl is happy. Life is that simple when you are 9. At Johnny Rockets, she mixes ketchup and mayonnaise, spreads it on her burger. The same shade of pink. The doctor is scraping my friend's womb once more. I put my hand on her shoulder and squeeze. She looks up at me and suddenly she's as she was all those years ago at the summer camp in Iran. I am struck by the powerful pull of her bright green eyes. Beauty was not her blessing. This is my punishment, she cries. God is punishing me for my sins. I want to say, God, in whose garment? Under what mask? In what country and under what law? But this is not the time for religious quarrels. Instead, I pinch myself pink. The pain radiates, numbs my tongue so that the only sound I push out of my throat is a hushed, desperate groan. That was the section pink. I will just finish with the poem that begins the book so that you just will have a sense how the book moves. So this is beat 1 in the book. It's a short section and it's in prose and poetry. I sit at this kitchen table in Los Angeles and take account. There is my childhood house becoming smoke. Friends scattered like storm-blown dandelion seeds. My mother tongue ripped blue from my throat. See the man I used to call husband seeking into the twin lungs of an ice beast, a lover murdered by his own pallid hands. See vain shades of lovers who came and went, a homeland community in jail, my cousin's husbands graying on the run, my school principal and his wife hanging from barrel ropes. That we choose the color of our loss like a blue sash draped across mourners black, that eyes follow blind toward the cobalt moon will slant us over and down crooked towards mud on our grave. چشم من آبی، روح من آبی، خون من آبی، فکر من آبی، روی من آبی، آه من آبی، دست من آبی، خون من آبی، جای من آبی، زبان من آبی، چشم من آبی. Loss is a language we all speak well, a body moan that echoes between ribs, the downfall that becomes windfall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sholeh. So powerful. Loss is the language we all speak. Wow. I want to recommend that folks who haven't read it yet read Sholeh's Letter to America poem in terrain.org as well, which was also included in our print anthology. It's one of my favorite poems from the series. I think it's pretty amazing, as is all of Sholeh's. We also have an interview with Sholeh. I didn't put that link in there, but if you search on our website, you'll find that. So thank you again. It is now my pleasure to introduce our final reader of the evening, Suzanne Roberts. Suzanne is a travel writer, memoirist, and poet. Her books include the 2012 National Outdoor Book Award-winning Almost Somewhere, 28 Days on the John Muir Trail, the award-winning memoir and travel essays Bad Tourist, Misadventures in Love and Travel, one of my favorite titles, and a collection of lyrical essays, Animal Bodies, on death, desire, and other difficulties, which we just excerpted on Sunday in terrain.org, and I'll throw the link in chat here in just a moment. Suzanne is also the author of 4 collections of poetry. Her work has been listed as notable in Best American Essays and published also in the New York Times, Creative Nonfiction, Brevity, The Rumpus, CNN, Long Reads, Isle, River Teeth, National Geographic Traveler, The Normal School, and elsewhere, as well as anthologized in The Kiss, Intimacies from Writers, The Pacific Crest Trailside Reader, Tahoe Blues, Southern Sin, True Stories of the Sultry South and Women Behaving Badly, Poems Dead and Undead, and in 2 editions of Best Women's Travel Writing. Suzanne, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simmons. I'm so happy to be here. And those readings were so beautiful, Christina and Sholeh. I'm so grateful for Train. It's such a beautiful magazine. And we were talking before everybody came in that it's a magazine of place, climate, and justice. So I thought that I would read 3 very short pieces, and they're all from Animal Bodies, which is my newest collection. Which is about death, desire, and other difficulties. And so all of the essays in here have something to do with loss or love, sort of like Sholeh's new book. And I'm going to start with an essay that is in 8 sections. And I am going to start with this one because I learned that Christina is from Edwards, Colorado. And this essay takes place just up the street from your house. At Beaver Creek. And I also love what you did with the juxtaposition of the orcas, with your own body. And this also is a juxtaposition of a body and aspen trees. So 8 hours. I let Brandon ski in front of the line all day, and I helped him up every time he fell. He ate as many tater tots at lunch as he wanted. He ate cake until he felt sick. I couldn't eat. I made sure he found the most gold nuggets at the gold mine, and he got to ski through the bear cave first. I told the other children in class it was because it was Brandon's birthday. That part was true, but that wasn't why I was being so nice to him. 2. On our way to the chairlift, my supervisor pulled me aside. Brandon's father hit an aspen tree on his first run of the day. His aorta detached. He was dead by the time patrol got there. The family decided to let Brandon finish ski school, enjoy his 6th birthday before finding out, before the world changed. Make sure that little boy has fun. Do you understand what I'm saying? My supervisor asked. I assured her I did. My own family kept secrets. I could do this. Let me carry your skis, Brandon. The voice cracking on its own. Carry mine, me too, and mine. It isn't your birthday, said the pit in my throat. It's only Brandon's birthday. 3. The aspen tree is part of a clonal colony derived from a parent tree. Each clone lives above ground for up to 150 years. The root system can live underground thousands of years. The aspen on the edge of the intermediate run still adds to its rings. New clones emerge from the earth. The man who hit the tree has been gone 20 years. Brandon is now a grown man, and every birthday is the anniversary of his father's death. The aspen tree will be there after even he's gone. 4, I want to ski in front. Well, I want $1 million. But why can't I ski in front? You can ski second behind Brandon. Why does Brandon get to ski in front the whole time? It's his birthday. It was my birthday last week, and I want to go through the bear cave first. It isn't your birthday today. It's only Brandon's birthday today. Let's sing to him while we ski. 5, Brandon was the last one to be picked up. We always refer to the stragglers as the least loved children, their parents drinking toddies at the bar. But I didn't even think it. Instead, I let him choose a video and sat with him as he laughed at the animated figures. 6, the mother finally came in with the ski patrol. Mommy, he called. She hugged him, her face scrunched up in a red and swollen way. Gravity had changed everything. 7, the bark of an aspen is white and soft and strong. 8, you can't cry. My supervisor had said, you have to make sure that little boy has a good time. Good time, good time, good time. The not knowing yet day. Happy birthday, dear Brandon. Happy birthday to you. We sing and we ski. We are airplanes and then we are race cars. We play and we play at pretending. Okay. So that was my place section. I'm going to read the essay that appeared this week in Terrain. Many of you are from the West. I saw Pam Houston here, and I know this is something she writes about as well, our wildfire situation. And for those of you who don't live in the West, the AQI is the air quality index, and probably 10 years ago, I didn't know what AQI stood for. But now we measure our days in the summer by the AQI. You know, it's like, oh, it's only 75. It's a great day for mountain biking. Oh, at 150, we can go for a hike. 250, we should probably start thinking about staying inside. Well, we had AQIs here in Tahoe last summer up to 800, which is completely off the scale. So this essay is arranged by the AQI, and it goes from green all the way through maroon, and it only goes up to like 301 or higher. So they may have to change it because of what we're experiencing here. So this essay to me feels a little unfinished. My book was due to the press, and a wildfire, the Caldor, was burning so close to my house. I can look out the window and see the burn scar. And so I wrote this essay while we were in evacuation, and I sent it to the press right as edits were due, and they were able to fit it in. So it feels a little unfinished because I didn't spend a million years on it like I do with most of my work. And I was in the middle of it, and I didn't know how the story would end, and I thought my house was going to burn down, for sure. And it's a miracle, really, that it didn't. So it's called in my book Dreaming in the Time of Wildfire because my editor was afraid that nobody would know what the pyrocene is. But I was like, they can look it up, right? So I retitled it for Terrain to the title I wanted, which is Dreaming in the Pyrocene. Green, good, 0 to 50. You are in what looks like a war-torn building with burn-blackened walls and the sky lurching through holes in the roof. You climb to the top floor, looking for your mother. You call out the same refrain you shouted when you found her dead. Mom, Mom, Mom. You hear her laugh. It is weak, more a tittering. She is a corpse on a bed, the wind and rain and dark night coming in sideways. You go to hug her emaciated body and she says, "Stop doing this to me." Before you can ask what she means, she says, "I won't come to you anymore. You must stop this." The next day, you tell your husband your dream and he asks what you think it means. You tell him you have to let her go. "So let her go," he says. You laugh the same kind of titter from your dream. Then you look at him and say, "I don't know how." Yellow, moderate, 51 to 100. You're back at work in Tahoe, staying in the dorms with your graduate students. You wake early to a white sky, a pinprick pink sun burning through, a new fire, the Caldor, 752 acres. Underneath the pall of smoke, the students are masked, lining up for COVID tests. You join them for your nose swab. Your husband is in Canada and leaving for a canoe trip that afternoon, and you won't hear from him for 10 days, not even a text. You tell him a new fire has started, and you're worried. He says, yeah, there's a lot of fuel to burn. By fuel, he means forest, and you cannot stop the tears. Later, you learn the fire has reached areas affected by the large blowdown event last winter. This is often described as interacting forest disturbances resulting in unexpected fire behavior. Orange, unhealthy for sensitive groups, 101 to 150. You dream your dorm room is burning. You wake up choking on the smoke, think, it really is on fire. You run to switch on the light. You close your window, grab your phone to look up the air quality index. It isn't a fire inside, you tell yourself. It is the world outside that is burning. Steep drainages and canyons in the region have continued to aid erratic winds and hamper control efforts. The fire has grown to 22,919 acres. Containment is at 0%. Red, unhealthy, 151 to 200. Despite the smoke, your students still want to hold class outdoors so they don't have to wear their masks. Your eyes are stinging and your lungs are aching, but you agree. During class, a bewildered bear cub wanders by. You tell your students to ignore it. But what about the mama? One of the students asks. You can tell there is no mama. No, there's nothing to be done, and don't want to reveal the sad facts to your students. 43,858 acres. After class, you scroll through the reports, a new lexicon of fire. Candling, creeping, spotting, torching. Extreme fire behavior. Purple, very unhealthy, 201 to 300. Your house is in the path of the fire, but here at the college you are on the other side of the lake. Even though there's no immediate danger where you are, some of your colleagues flee the smoke. One by one, they board airplanes. The students cannot afford to do the same. In extreme fire conditions, predictability is difficult because such fires often exercise some degree of influence on their environments and behave erratically, sometimes dangerously. You finish your teaching duties, head back to your house to rescue things. But what things? What would your husband want? You walk around the house wondering what you can live without. Everything. Nothing. You call your sister-in-law, wander room to room, distracted. You ask her what your husband might want. She says, just take what matters to you and go. You pull some art from the walls, a few of your husband's favorite flannels, a Moroccan rug you paid too much for in Marrakesh. Before leaving, you water your plants. It's not your fault, you tell them. You shouldn't have to suffer, too. You thank your house and then walk out into the raining ash, the brown sky. You drive north, nearly throw up on yourself in the car, sick from the smoke. Highway 50, the road to your hometown, is closed both ways. 104,309 acres. Maroon, hazardous, 301 and higher. You do not know how this story will end, so you flee now at 149,684 acres before the evacuation orders come. Head to the coast, breathe in the clean, foggy air, walk along the beach with your friend, Nancy. Her phone buzzes. She glances down at it and says, "Oh no, Uncle Wes has died of COVID." "I'm so sorry," you say. "We're living in crisis land." Nancy nods. You walk on together, avoiding the purplish jellyfish that have washed onto shore. You breathe in the sweet rot at the ocean's edge, watch the lacy foam bubble on the sand and disappear. But then you spot a rafter of wild turkeys under the eucalyptus trees. You both stop to watch them, listen to their strange and soft cooing. For a moment, There is no fire and no pandemic, just the brown, striated miracle of these large birds. That night you dream you're at a party and your mother comes to the door. She is part woman, part old dog, and she leans up against you because she is too weak to stand. You help her in, seat her in the recliner next to your friend Andy, who is eating popcorn from a blue ceramic bowl. You say to your mother, I thought you weren't going to come back to me, that I wouldn't see you again. She looks up at you from her lounge chair and says, I know, I wasn't going to, but I'm addicted. Before you can ask what she means, even though you already know, she turns into a pile of kindling. You reach for a piece of her and wake up. Your hair still smelling of smoke. Okay, so I have run out of my time. The third piece I was going to read was the beginning of an essay about abortion. That was my justice part, although, you know, thinking about climate and climate action is also justice. But I loved Sholeh's piece, and so we'll just leave the abortion piece to her. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for another powerful set of readings. I mean, really amazing work. For all of our readers here this evening, Christina, Sholeh, and Suzanne, thank you so much. We definitely have some time now to answer some questions. I have not seen any posted in chat, so let me give folks a chance to post a question or two here. And while they do that, I'm gonna start with a question for all three of our readers this evening. That sort of follows from what you just read, Suzanne. But first, before I forget, a couple announcements for folks here still with us. Speaking of the Pyrocene, we are in the middle of publishing our really pretty recently launched Look Out Writing and Art About Wildfire series in partnership with the Spring Creek Project at Oregon State University. So the first piece of that published last week, the second piece publishes this week, or maybe it's the third, I don't know, but we published through July. We have 13 pretty powerful pieces for that. And then also I want to remind folks that our contest submissions are open now through September 5th, and those are judged by Sean Hill for poetry, Janice Ray for nonfiction, and Kylie Fajardo-Anstein for fiction. So, okay, so back to my question here, and I'm going to just quick see in chat if I see some other questions. I'm seeing lots of well-deserved kudos for such a powerful and evocative reading. Yes, for sure. So we all live in and write in an era of loss, in what Suzanne just called crisis land, for sure. Does the act of writing itself for you give you hope in such prevalent loss? And what else gives you hope today? So why don't I start with Christina on that one?
Sure. Still feeling so gutted from both of those readings. That was amazing. Thank you both. Hope's such a hard word. I have a very tricky relationship with hope right now. But I did just recently finish like a 10-step eco grief program. And I think spending 10 weeks in community with people who just shared and with whom I could be intimate and completely disclose all my feelings and feel so held, a group of strangers, no less, from, you know, all over the world. That, I don't know if it's hope that it made me feel, but it made me feel supported in a way that I had lacked for years. And it's made me more resilient and able to take on so much more. I've realized the process of deep diving my eco grief just set me up for moving through the world in a way that I was not. I was really paralyzed until I went through that. So yeah, I think I'll go with that. And the program, by the way, is called goodgrief.org in case you need it yourself. It's a great program.
Thank you. I was typing that out in my notes. That's good to know there is such a place and a tool. Sholeh, how about you?
Well, I think hope is an interesting word because it's so personal, you know. but I think when we all write about loss, there's always hope in it, because what happens is that when you go through loss or downfalls, it is part of the process of growth. And in my book, I end with gratitude, and I think gratitude is a better word for me than hope, because it's more than hope. I don't know how to describe that. Yeah.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Okay. I think about that Bertolt Brecht quote, right? In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times. And I feel like for me, I don't know if writing gives me hope, but it feels like I'm writing out of a sense of urgency in a lot of respects. And I'm finding that the natural world, it always enters my work, even when I'm writing about myself, because as I look out the windows, I mean, they just took out like 9 white fur in my yard because they died. We have a terrible blight, and they estimate that all the white fur in the Tahoe Basin are going to die, which is 25% of our forest. So I feel like I look out and it's all around me, and I feel a sense of urgency to write about it. And I've noticed a couple of things. I've noticed that when I started writing about nature, in my 20s, I wrote my first memoir, Almost Somewhere, about hiking the John Muir Trail. There was so much wonder in that book. When I look back at it, I was looking at everything with wonder. There was one strand of forest that we walked through that had suffered a wildfire. Just one, though, in that whole 200 miles. And now I feel like I'm writing from a place of grief. So it feels really different. And I'm not going to say that I don't have any hope, but I do like Sholeh's idea of gratitude, because I still do have beautiful nature. I mean, the forest behind my house is still intact. It didn't burn. And I'm so grateful. And today I went hiking. I hike there every day and saw all the snow plants coming up. And so that kind of thing gives me hope in the moment. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. And I too love that idea of gratitude. And I think it ties in a little bit with grace too, no matter how you see that. So thank you. We have a question from Leanna Torres in New Mexico. Leanna, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Or I can ask it for you. Leanna's still here, maybe? Well, I'll ask. Okay. She wonders, from a craft perspective, from each writer who read tonight, how you start your pieces, or what sparks your essays. And let's expand that a little bit. Do you find that it is a process of seeing or getting that spark, or is it like a truly random kind of spark often with your pieces? Suzanne, you want to start us off this time?
Sure. It's an interesting thing, because I actually don't. I think that inspiration or whatever comes from hard work. It comes from sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to do the work. And I do these sort of scene lists. So I probably have one here in my office, but I for whatever project I think I want to work on, or whatever essay I think I want to work on, I start with a list of sort of just scenes or part, like, emotional resonance. And then I put a list on the refrigerator and I write, or on my office wall, and I write and I cross it off. And when the end of the day, if I get to cross one off or more than one, I do a little fan kick and and for me, that's sort of how I get started on essays. But I will say I'm a really slow writer, and essays can take me years and years and years to write. Some of the essays in Animal Bodies took me 15 years to write. I mean, a long time. But if I want to speed up the process, I found a little trick. And that trick is to use like a kind of a structure. Sometimes it's called a hermit crab, like where you have a kind of an overlaying structure and then you write into the structure. So for me, the AQI did that, right? I also have an essay about having a breakup with a friend over divisive politics that's in the avalanche, danger scale. And so if I have to write about something really difficult, I kind of create a little assignment for myself. And 8 hours, right? That was written in, because I was with the boy for 8 hours. So I wanted 8 sections. And so making a little like assignment for myself will help me get to difficult material faster than if I just try to start writing.
Thank you. Sholeh, how about you?
Well, I everything inspires me. So this is like everything. But I'm a multi-genre writer. I write plays, I write librettos, I like poetry. I write poetry. So I think different things this inspire me in a different way. And I just put up a link for a short film to Abacus of Loss, because that'll show you how my creativity works, because that's a film, that's a combination of prose, poetry, film, art, all of that together. I don't know. I think my advice to people is always take notes, and take note of everything. Open your eyes, and but it isn't just opening your eyes, but it's also like open your ears. Sometimes you are inspired by something you hear. I don't know. So everything inspires me, and I write all the time, and I take copious notes, and I always go back to them. And sometimes I don't. I have all these books full of notes that are just sitting there.
Thank you. Christina, how about you?
Sure. I'm glad Pam Houston is here, because when my very first writing workshop, Writers by Writers, Pam Houston was teaching a class, and she had introduced this concept of glimmers to me. And I have religiously followed this concept of glimmers, which is just any idea just kind of sparkling like a coin on the ground, flashing a curiosity at you. And I see those, and I'm like, I don't know what question is embedded in that curiosity, but I know that something there is to be opened and to be discovered. So I write down all of those glimmers, and I just use them as prompts. But the funny thing about this essay is that my glimmer was Tahlequah, and I was like, Tahlequah. Okay, so I had her written down like 4 times on my glimmer list, but I was like, it can't be my story. Everyone has a connection to Tahlequah. Like everyone, I mean, millions of people felt for her, like grief. I just didn't feel, I was like, who am I to write about her? I've never even seen an orca in my life. And so I just didn't feel like it was my story to be told. And then a writer friend of mine, actually, I saw a picture of him on a boat, and he had a pod of orcas was there, and he said, there's 2 babies here. And I knew, because I'd been following them and was obsessed with them, I was like, that's Tahlequah and her new baby. And he was like, how do you know this? And I'm like, because I'm obsessed, which is also another clue that you're onto something. So at that moment, I was like, I'm done. I don't care if I'm not supposed to write this or it's not mine, I'm going to do it. And by then it had been building in me for 6 months to a year, and it just completely poured out. It was a compulsive writing session. And so, yeah. And then I would also say that hermit crabs, I didn't know what those were called in my early 20s when I was also traveling around the world. I just used hermit crabs constantly. It was just, I don't know, I'm a bit of a shy personality and introvert. I think I loved hermit crabs because it was a way to, like, in a secondhand way, get in through a topic. And so I love using hermit crabs to pull out when I want to write about a concept, even if I pull out that kind of scaffolding later. But yeah, that's kind of.
I have one more thing to say about that, about inspiration, is that if any of you are multilingual or bilingual, I think translating is a beautiful way to get inspired, because not only it's a service, other than the fact that it's a service to translate a literary text, but it also teaches you so much about language, and it triggers so many ideas and memories in your head during the process of translation that that's always, for me, it has always the beginning of many of my projects, through entering text by other writers.
Thank you, Sholeh and Christina and Suzanne. Those are very insightful, inspiring, if you will, answers. I appreciate that.
I actually wanted to add one more thing too, that I always forget to tell people, but I also use writing prompts, and I create writing prompts, and I have a newsletter that I send out every Friday through Substack, and I'm trying to figure out how to paste that in the chat. But I send out a themed prompt every Friday, and it's free to sign up. So if anybody wants inspiration and you want to like try some of my writing prompts, then you can sign up.
Awesome. And can they sign up from your website?
They can, yeah. They can go on my website, and then there's a 52 prompts, because I send one out every week, and they're themed. And last month's theme was travel and adventure. No, home. Travel and adventure was the theme before, home, and now we're writing about the wider world.
Awesome. Thank you, Suzanne, and thanks for sharing that. That's really, I mean that in two ways: for sharing it here today, but also just sharing these sort of great prompts to get people writing. I think that's really wonderful. And someday I hope to sit down and write again as well. Okay, so what other questions do we have from folks? Any questions? I mean, I have one more I can ask, but I want to give other people a chance to before we say bye. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to ask, and maybe this one will end on. So, what are you each working on now from a writing perspective? And when might that come? In some cases, for some of you, maybe sooner rather than later. When might that come to fruition, or what's that going to result in? So let me start with Sholeh this time.
I'm the wrong person to ask, because I'm always working on several things at the same time. But during the pandemic, at the onset of the pandemic, I was hired by some Hollywood producers to write an original screenplay. And that's how I spent the pandemic 2 years to write the screenplay. And it was my first screenplay. And I had written of course, they hired me because they had read my plays and they thought I could write this thing. And I found that very, very compelling. So now I've started my second screenplay, and I'm working on that. And I'm working on an opera. So these two things.
That is awesome. All that. Congratulations, Sholeh. That's so cool. I can't wait to see or hear, in some cases, what comes out of that. So, Christina, how about you?
Sure. I'm not sure. So someone asked too when the book might come out. I don't know. It's usually considered taboo to talk about this, but I'm still on submission, and it's and I'm in discussions with publishers, and I'm also considering and working on changing the book of essays into a book of narrative nonfiction, which is actually thrilling. Like, I hate to admit it. And I'm also taking a lot of fiction classes with that kind of in mind. And as I was taking all those fiction classes, I ended up starting a novel. So, I mean, it's such early stages, and it still taps into all my themes, because, as others have said, like, climate crisis is still urgent, and that's not going to go anywhere for me. But you know, I don't pick and choose these things. They pick me. So I've started a new project, and I'm rewriting another one.
Well, thanks, and good luck on both of those. Suzanne?
Well, you know, like I said, I'm a really slow writer, and I have to overwrite and then cut, because I never know what I'm doing until way in. And so I have been writing a book about taking care of my mom when she was dying of cancer. And it was a book about how I was writing this book as she was dying and declining, and how writing sort of not only allowed us to communicate with each other. So I'd write something and she'd read it, something I wanted to tell her, and then we'd talk about the piece, but we wouldn't talk to each other. And So I thought that was the book, and I've written 100. This is how crazy I am. I've written 150,000 words. I know a book is not 150,000 words. Okay, I know it has to be like 70,000. But then also sort of after my mom's died, my husband and I both quit our jobs. We're renting our house out this summer, and we're going to live in our van. And it's not a fancy van. It's like a down by the river van, no toilet, no shower. And we did this 3 months last summer, and we're going to do it now we're going to do it for a while and then head to Spain and Portugal. And so it's an interesting thing because we're sort of having our midlife reinvention. I don't want to call it a crisis, but a lot of it is because we've lost all of our parents. And so sort of through my mother's grief, through the, sort of wanting to do everything now, we've been traveling. And so I just wrote a book proposal about this book that I've started that has all these flashbacks now to my taking care of my mom. But the sort of arc of the book is sort of, van travel, which we've spent a number of months already in the van. So we'll see. It could turn into something else. I don't know. And that's why I never worry about talking about it, because it's like, oh, it could, tomorrow I could decide it's going to be a, novel and have aliens in it or something. So, I just kind of let the process tell me what wants to come. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you. And the structure, you have so many great structure ideas too. That's really wonderful. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I especially want to thank Suzanne and Sholeh and Christina for reading such powerful, moving, beautiful, personal works. I thank you so much for joining us. And I think that's it. Anything else from anybody you want to add? No? All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you online and maybe even in person sometime soon. Bye-bye.